What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 117. We're here to do a little power ranking of SEC defenses tonight. We're here in the middle of June. Got a lot to talk about. Like I said, gonna be ranking the SEC defenses. Who's looking really strong coming in this year. Obviously, a lot of movement on that side of the ball. A lot of new defensive staffs in the SEC too, so it's going to be really interesting. Some second year defensive staffs as well. Some guys moving within the conference, so a lot of moving parts on that side of the ball. So we're going to break that down a little bit. We're going to talk about potentially conferences adding sponsors. We've had a lot of that talk lately with field, sponsorships on the field. Now we're talking about possibly add sponsorships to conference names. So you could have the All State Big 12 or All State 12 or whatever. It's a bunch of junk. I think y'all probably already know our opinions on that. Some other kind of
It's like
personnel.
when you're watching a movie and the movie director didn't get the rights to use a certain team's logo or something, and so they're the Boston Red Dragons or something weird. It's gonna feel like that if it ever comes to that. It's like, are we in an alternate universe? Like, what the hell is going on? If that does end up happening, where it's no longer SEC, Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12, whatever, ACC, whatever you want to call them, it's going to feel like we're watching a really poorly made movie.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be weird. I mean, obviously nobody's gonna call it whatever it ends up being. I mean, it's always going to be SEC, Big 12, ACC, Big 10. Obviously, like I just don't see that ever. Like nobody's going to call it the All State 12. I don't know. It's
Not in
just
my house. Not in my house, they won't.
no. It's just weird. So talk about Caleb Downs a little bit. I know you got some thoughts on USC and Lincoln Riley. Probably touch on recruiting a little bit as well. So a lot to get into. We'll go ahead and jump into our SEC defensive rankings, um, and we're going to go through our top 10, kind of who we're expecting to break out. Obviously, a lot of good defensive players. One thing that jumped out to me is a lot of good defensive linemen, a lot of good edge rushers. I mean, that's been a priority too in the portal for a lot of teams in the winter and spring cycles. So, without further ado, who you got as your number 10 defense in the SEC for
Number 10,
2024?
preseason 2024 rankings. I have LSU at number 10. We talked about this before we started recording. Brian Kelly's too good of a coach to allow the same thing to be his Achilles heel back to back seasons. So he's going to, nip whatever the problem was in the bud. I'm not saying they're going to make leaps and bounds and just be an NFL looking defense, but they're going to be better than what they showed last year. I mean, they were second to last in the SEC in all categories defensively. They are maybe not turnovers and fumbles. We're talking about yardage. They're not going to be that bad again. Brian Kelly will not allow that to happen. He's too good of a coach. He doesn't consistently have the same problems anywhere he's been. So I think they at least jump to 10. If they jump to 10, if they're the 10th ranked defense last year, they're probably one of the 4 teams in the playoff, if we're being real. I mean, you got the Heisman Trophy winner and you couldn't get you lost 2 games. I mean, if you have a number 10 defense against Ole Miss, you probably don't lose against Ole Miss last year. I mean, that was the shootout for the 80s, one of the best games I've ever seen. But if you have the number 10 defense in the nation in the SEC last year, you're not losing that game more than likely. So I think that they're going to be a little bit better, and it's going to help them. Obviously, they're going to be not worse in a bad way, but they're going to be a step back on offense because they lost the Heisman Trophy winner. But they have no choice but to get better. I mean, like we talked about before we started recording, a program of this caliber. I mean, this is a blue blood program when it comes to college football. This blue blood program should never be in the bottom 5 of defense or offense ever. There's no excuse for it. No matter what the team is, that should never happen to them in any case. In the bottom 5 of their conference, it should never be a thing.
Yeah, I mean, as you said too, LSU. I mean, they were second to last in the SEC in points per game allowed, yardage allowed. I believe I looked. They were. I want to say I feel like it was worse than this. I want to say 82nd last year in defense. It may have been worse than that, honestly. I mean, it was in the bottom third of college football, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, a school like LSU, like you said, one of the top 5 or 10 best programs in America, like that shouldn't be the case. So, they completely overhauled their defensive staff. I love the moves they made. They brought in Blake Baker from Missouri. Um, Pretty much a lot of new positional coaches as well. So they did a really good job overhauling that. And I'm with you. I think they'll be much, much better this year. Number 10, little step back for them this year on this side of the ball. I feel like it's Tennessee defensively. Only 3 starters returning. James Pierce Jr., though, is probably going to be a first round pick. The edge rusher for Tennessee, going to be a junior this year. Um, Probably one of the best players on that Tennessee roster. Think he's going to have a great season. Um, all in all, I still think they'll be pretty solid defensively. I just feel like with the the least amount of experience returning, probably in the SEC, maybe outside of Mississippi State, I think is the only other one that they only have 3 starters projected to be returning right now. So just feel like that they're going to take a slight step back just with a lot of new personnel. They did a good job in the portal, though, as many teams did in the SEC. Um, I just feel like it's going to be a little bit flip flop this next year. I feel like Tennessee's offense is going to jump back up, kind of that 2022 version of themselves, get back, probably around 40 points a game. They were only at like 33 or 34 last year, which for a Josh Heupel offense isn't that great, and really lacked in explosive plays. I think their defense will take a little bit step back with some inexperience, especially in the secondary. That's really the big key for them. Um, it was overall their defense was much better last year than it was in 22. Um, and I feel like if they would have had this defense last year in 22, um, I mean they had a great season anyways. Obviously, almost made the playoffs, but they may would have made the playoffs if they would have had this defense last year. But I think it's going to take a little bit of a step back, but I still think it's going to be a solid defense all in all, and that's why I got them at 10.
Yeah, excuse me. I had Tennessee slipping down on my list from where they were last year as well. At number 9, I've got Auburn. They were at 8 last year, but it was also with 2 less teams. I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be a top 10 team or top 10 defense again in the SEC, returning to six projected starters, returning on the defensive side of the ball for Auburn. Older guys, Eugene Asante, Lord have mercy. He comes back, led us in tackles last year, led Auburn in tackles last year. He's returning. That's a big piece right there in the linebacking field. Got some guys on the edge, patched some holes through the transfer portal on the defensive line. Secondary returned a bunch of former starters, guys that started in the past. And so is there going to be an older group on the defensive side of the ball for Auburn? So I think that they're going to take a step up in the defense this year, but really fall down one leg because we're adding 2 teams.
Yeah, I mean, I love what they did defensively with their staff, adding DJ Durkin. I think that's a huge addition. His track record speaks for itself. Bringing in Charles Kelly as well. Um, not only coaching, but on the recruiting trail, you see it's already paying dividends. And then, like you mentioned, Eugene Asante, I mean, dude's constantly around the football. And then defensive line, they completely overhauled that portal, add 5 or 6 pieces through both windows. So, yeah, I think they're going to be better defensively as well. But I've got Kentucky at number 9, and pound for pound, one of the best defensive players in the country, and Deion Walker. And when I say pound for pound, I mean all 6'6", 348 pounds of him. Leading Kentucky with the second rushing defense in the SEC last year. I think they're gonna be really good again against the run. Obviously, I mean he's clogging the middle. Dude's probably gonna be a first round pick. probably a high level first round pick. He's just absolute difference maker there. And it all starts up front for Kentucky. Like I said, second in run defense last year in the conference. I think they'll be up there again. Um, Kind of like Tennessee and really some other teams in the conference. The secondary is a little bit of a question mark. Um, but all in all, I think Kentucky's going to have a pretty solid unit. They returned a lot of guys on that side of the ball. I believe eight of their 11 leading tacklers or 8 of 13. So a good bit of experience there, and I think they're going to be a solid unit this year, led by Deion Walker.
I've got Kentucky at 8 on my list. I a lot of the same reasons. I believe from the source that I got, it was. Let me pull up the Athlon Sports. According to them, Kentucky and South Carolina are tied for the most returning starters on the defensive side of the ball with 9. And then you compile that with the offensive side of the football. They got Brock Vandagriff coming in to play quarterback for them. I think they're gonna be much better offensively this year. Obviously, if your offense is better, it definitely dictates the numbers that your defense puts up. You're in better field position. You're not turning the ball over as much. You're not pinned against your own territory, defending your own end zone on some turnovers. Like they had some problems with that last year. They also did not catch the ball extremely well last year. They led the league in drops, I believe. So I think that all that is going to be corrected this year on the offensive side of the ball, better quarterback play. So that makes it a little easier on your defense to play better with, obviously, like I said, better field position, your team scoring points, not turning the ball over. So I think all those things compiled together is going to bump Kentucky up the charts defensive wise, because they were 11 last year, 12, something along those lines. And I think they're going to be a top 10 defense this year, just mainly because of how much better their offense is going to help boost up their defense as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean that's Mark Stoops, calling card too. I mean,
100%.
he's, that's kind of what his program's built on is a solid defense, and that's what's allowed Kentucky to elevate themselves to the status they have now and being consistently at 8, 9, 10 win programs, but because of his defense and the toughness, physicality on that side of the ball, and I think that's going to be, a staple for them this year, led by Deion Walker. And for a lot of the same reasons, I got Auburn at number 8. I think offensively they should be better. I think in turn that's going to help their defense. They were, pretty solid defensively last year. I mean, the numbers, they were 8th in the SEC, 22.6 points per game, 357 yards a game. But I think those numbers could have been better if their offense would have helped them out a little bit more. And there was
1,000.
times in games where they got fatigued, didn't really have the depth that they needed. And I think they've addressed that as well. Like I said, really going heavily on the defensive line, I think will be critical in that. And I think, too, boasted by a little bit better offense, I think in turn that's going to help them defensively. And I got them at number 8.
Yeah, absolutely. The lack of 3 and outs is necessary for your defense to be successful. If you're constantly going 3 and out, and your defense is having 2 minutes to rest and they're right back out there, and the other team's putting together a 10, 11 play drive, I mean, it's going to wear them down eventually. So yeah, I agree with that 100%. We're kind of close to each other so far on this list. Let's see if we can keep going. I know we're different here because you already said this team, but at number 7, I have Tennessee. I think they're going to slip a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be too drastic because of the same way we're talking right now about Kentucky and Auburn. I think their offense is going to be better this year. Joe Milton had the best arm in college football, but he couldn't throw a deep ball to save his life. I think they're going to be able to stretch the field a little bit better this year. We know they're going to be able to run the ball. They were able to do that last year. I don't think that's going anywhere. They got weapons for sure. And the quarterback that they have now, Nico, is from all coverage that he's gotten and the little bit that we've seen him play, he can throw the deep ball. So I think that the ability to stretch the field and hit the intermediate passes is a lot better than Joe Milton did and they were able to do last year. I think it's going to elevate them, offensively. And so I think it'll help them, defensively, but I don't think that they're going to be as dominant as they were last year. But I think they're going to be just fine and be top 10 defense, but I don't think they're going to be top 5 like they were last year.
I agree. That's why I had them a little bit further down, just because of the lack of experience and guys returning. I think their offense may be humming so much that they're hitting explosive plays that their defense is out there more. And allowing them to maybe give up some more yards, some more points, and I mean that happens a lot. When your offense really scores fast, and I really think Tennessee's getting back to that this year. I mean, I've really felt that since in January since the season ended. I just felt like Tennessee was going to get back to this. Like this is Josh Heupel's quarterback. Like as
Oh
good as
yeah,
Hendon Hooker was, like that even that really like I mean Hendon Hooker is a good talent, but he's not Nico's talent. Like this is legit Josh Heupel's guy. Like
oh yeah.
I mean this guy's got a much higher ceiling than Hendon Hooker will ever have. And Hendon Hooker was great and he was experienced, and that's a big reason why he was so good. But I mean, I think this guy is going to do really special things in this offense. I think the receivers are going to play well for him, and I just think he's in the perfect offense, and I'm really interested to see what Josh Heupel can do with him. Not to make this an offensive segment here, but I'm excited about that, and part of that reason is why I have Tennessee. I think their defensive numbers will be down a little bit, kind of like we've both been saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you have at 7?
7, I got Texas A&M. Just kind of looking at their pieces. Um, I like their defensive front a lot. Shamar Turner's back. They've got some really big bodies up front, guys that have played a good bit of football for them. And two, obviously DJ Durkin was there. Um, I think obviously they were a solid defense last year. I mean, they were sixth in the SEC, 22.1 points per game. Um, and an offense that was not great at times either. So I think a lot was kind of on their shoulders. They were really good against the run. I mean, they were actually, I think, top 3 or 4 in the SEC in yards per game. They only gave up 316 yards a game, which was tied with Alabama and tied with, I believe, somebody else. So I believe they're third or fourth in yards per game in the SEC. So they did a really good job. Obviously, Mike Elko, we know what he is as a defensive mind. I just think he's going to instill that toughness. And I think they're going to play a very, similar way to the way they've been playing. Not returning a ton of starters, but most of them are kind of up front, the guys that played a lot of snaps. So I just still think they're going to be a really solid defense. He just has that philosophy. And we know kind of how he can get his guys motivated, what he's done in the past as a defensive coordinator, with the success he's had, and then obviously what he did at Duke and getting those teams to play above their, really play above their capability or to their highest capability. So I think A&M they're going to have a solid defense again because it's built from the trenches out, and I think they're going to be solid again.
Number 6, I've got Missouri. I think they're going to be pretty consistent with last year defensively. I don't know that they're going to be as dominant last year. We know we've talked about this when we did our preseason coverage of our rankings as team rankings, but I don't think that they're going to fall drastically off the face of the earth. I still think they're going to be a top 10 on the border, teetering on top 5 defense again, like last year. I like what Drink has done. He's recruiting really well. He's got a decent amount of starters returning. So I like Missouri to honestly rinse and repeat on the defensive side of the ball this year. I know it's going to be a little different offensively. We spoke on that already, but defensively, I think that they just reload and let's do it again.
I couldn't agree more. I think you laid it out perfectly because I got Missouri at 6 too. Um, like you said, think even with the defensive staff change, I think I like the guys they replaced them with, and people around the industry really like the guys. Like although they lost Blake Baker as DC, bringing in Corey Batoon, a lot of people are high on him as well. Like people around college football are really impressed with how Drinkwitz has put his staff together. Like the fact he's continuing to get high level, assistant coaches. Um, and I thought an interesting stat too. They allow 14 points a game or fewer in 4 of their last 6 games. So they really got in a rhythm at the end of the year
They
last
figured
year.
something out. Yeah.
So I think they're going to be able to carry that over a little bit. Um, Johnny Walker, they got a stud 5-star defensive lineman coming in. So I think they're going to be able to be disruptive again. Like I said, I've got them at 6, and I think they're going to be, a top half defense in the SEC this year. And I think the path is there for them to do what they did a year ago and make noise for a playoff spot.
Absolutely. And number 5, and it really irks me that I've got both of these teams inside my top 5. But I got Oklahoma. I think that they return a lot of veteran guys that are now considered veteran guys. Venables is, we know, a defensive-minded coach. We know how their offense is going to be this year. I think they're going to be much better. Obviously, we talked about that. It improves the defense. I think they're going to be ready to go. They got depth for days. So I think Oklahoma is going to come in and dominate defensively in the conference. I don't know that they're going to dominate offensively. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be better than last year. But man, I think that he has recruited and built this defense, in preparation of joining the SEC. He knows what it takes, and I think they're going to be really good this year.
Yeah,
I think they were 6 or 7 guys.
I do as well, and I got Oklahoma at number 5 as well. 11 of their top 13 tacklers returned. I think the third year of Brent Venables there and him getting his defensive identity established, I think will do wonders. Like I said, adding Dominic Williams in the spring portal window at defensive tackle. I think that was a big addition. That was a guy Texas wanted as well. LSU wanted him. So that was a big get because somebody in the SEC was going to get him, and it was big that Brent Venables was able to do that. I just think year 3 establishing that identity. I mean, you saw the jump they made from year 1 to year 2, not just defensively but as a team. You look at their stats last year, obviously in the Big 12, but they would have been 9th defensively. If they were in the SEC. Just based on the numbers, but I feel like with a good bit of guys returning, I just think they're going to take an additional step forward, and I think they're going to be a top 5 defense this year. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that translates from the Big 12 to the SEC for him going into year 3.
And the number 4, this team better be a top 5 defense with how many pieces they've added, how much hype is around them, how many people they're returning from last year's defense, but not only the people they've added, it was the caliber of the people that they added. I mean, a former number 1 overall recruit who was dominating at Texas A&M. And yes, it is the Ole Miss Rebel Bear Land Sharks. I got them at number 4 on the defense side of the football. We spoke about it in our team rankings. If it's this year or it ain't happening for another year or 2 for Lane at Ole Miss. So it's all his eggs are in this basket, and this defense better show out. They're a top 5 defense on paper, but let the play do the talking, obviously. But on paper, this is a top 5. Honestly, on paper, it's the number 1 defense in the conference. I don't have that much faith in it, but they better be a top 5 defense, or they're not going to have the season that they're expecting to have.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I mean, they've invested a lot into this season. A lot. They've upgraded this defense talent-wise across the board. Number 1 portal class. I believe they brought in 24 commits. So, a lot's riding on this 2024 season. It's definitely playoff or bust, and really, I've been thinking about it a lot. What would be considered a success? I think, and just in my view, I think a playoff spot and winning a game, I think is like, to me, if I don't know if just making the playoffs is good enough. And the reason I say that is because you look at two of their last three seasons. If they would have, if it would have been a 12-team playoff, they would have been in two of the last 3 years. So I don't know if just making it's enough. I think they're expecting, hey, we need to make it with a chance to make a run. I think they need to win a game, in my opinion, for it to not be considered a quote unquote failure, I guess. I mean, I don't know if they say it would be like a catastrophic failure if they just made the playoffs. I mean, I don't think it would be like that. But I do think Ole Miss fans, you look at this roster, I think they're expecting more than just that. Like, I think that's going to leave them a little disappointed. Just wanted to get your opinion on that before I go to my number 4.
Yeah, and I spoke when we did our team rankings. I think that if they get to the playoffs, it's a successful season because of just the history of Ole Miss as a program. But with the hype around this team, the expectations of this team, how many people he's gone out and has transferred into the program and seemingly to come win a championship, and all the expectations, yes, I agree that it would be a huge, tremendous letdown if they got to the playoffs and then lost the game, because you do make a great point. The last two seasons, they would have been in the playoffs. So it's just a repeat of the last two seasons. Now, I don't think that they'll be a top 4 team if they get in the playoffs. Yeah. So that means they're probably hosting the first round or their first game of the semi or the playoffs. They would probably win that game, so it would be considered a success because, dude, imagine how wild the Grove would be pre-game and then all those fans flood to the stadium. Dude, obviously if any SEC team gets to host, but this season right here with all the hype and everything around it, and Lane Kiffin being there and all this, if they were to host the playoffs this year, man, that would be – I might drive to Oxford.
I'll be honest. It's definitely a real possibility. I think, like you said, I don't see them getting a top 4 seed because, only the SEC champion is going to get a top 4 seed. So whoever wins in Atlanta is the only one getting a top 4 seed. So you're definitely going to have, very likely at least one SEC team hosting, possibly two, because seeds 4 through 8 are going to host, or 5 through 8, are going to host first round games. So it's very possible.
Ole Miss will be a top. Yeah, they'll be 5 through 8. I don't think that they're going to be 9 through 12. I think they're 5 through 8 for sure.
I'd love to see that. I would love to see them host a first round playoff game. That would be something to see for sure. Hope that happens. That'd be awesome. But yeah, I think playoffs are like I said. That's definitely got to happen in my opinion. But I do feel like just the mood of Ole Miss fans, they're expecting and wanting more than just that. They want to feel like they have a legitimate shot to make a deep run. They don't want to just, scrape in and be like, we made the playoffs. But which obviously making the playoffs is great, but when you go from 4 to 12, it doesn't mean quite as much because, you've got more spots now. So obviously it's not quite as valuable. That's why I think they need to win a game or, at least feel like they have a shot at a deep run there. So, with all that being said, though, I've got Alabama as my number 4 defense. I actually put Ole Miss at 3.
Wow.
Not to jump ahead. I got Alabama at 4. I'm not lying to you. I flip-flopped back on this for 30 minutes today. Probably just going back and forth looking at these rosters. I gave Ole Miss the edge, like I said, because they've invested so much in this particular group, bringing in Walter Nolan, bringing in all the pieces in the secondary, bringing in Princely, Umanamelian from Florida, the edge. Yeah. I don't believe I pronounced that correctly.
Umami Levin, maybe Umami. Yeah.
Florida's best edge rusher. I'll say that he's Florida's best edge rusher. He's in Oxford now. He's playing with Walter Nolan, Chris Paul, the Arkansas linebackers in Oxford. Everybody and your brothers in Oxford for this 2024 season. So, just with what they have invested in it and kind of what they have returned on that side of the ball, pretty good performance last year. They were seventh in the SEC, so not too bad. 22.5 points per game. That probably got doubled when Jaden Daniels came into
Yeah,
Oxford. So,
100%.
um, probably a little, maybe a little bit skewed. They returned six starters as well. So yeah, there's no reason it shouldn't be a top five defense. But enough about them. Alabama at four. Um, yeah, I just think with the new staff coming in, the concerns in the secondary. I love what they did in the portal though. Bringing in Deshaun Jones, bringing in Keon Sabb. They brought in Damani Jackson before Nick Saban retired. Um, Brought in Cameron Howard, that started at Charlotte last year. Brought in King Mack from Penn State. So brought in some guys from some high level Power Fives and guys that Keon Sabb specifically played a lot of football. Was on a national championship team last year at Michigan. So um, liked the I liked how they filled the holes. I just think it's going to take some time for those pieces to come together. I do like the front seven a lot. I mean, I think one of the best linebacker duos in college football with Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell. Um, but not only is it it's a new style, but a new scheme as well. So I just think with all that being considered, I think they're going to be right there, near the top of the conference. But um, I've got Alabama at four at the moment, and I would put Ole Miss three, just based on those reasons.
I've got Alabama at three, and for the reason of they return a fair amount of guys, Deontay Lawson, Malachi Moore being the two front running guys they're returning. Both those guys are absolute dogs. They're coaches on the field, both of them. But that team went to the semifinals last year. I know it's under a new coach, but the new coach is the coach that also went to the went to the national championship game last year. So I don't think that they're just going to take a drastic step back and just, oh my God, it's a completely different defense. I think that they're going to pretty much rinse and repeat. They got enough guys on there that have been there before. It's not going to be new to them. Bunch of leaders, a bunch of veteran guys on that and at their depth positions as well. So I don't think Alabama's going to look that much different this year on either side of the football. I mean, all these guys are great talent. They got more great coaches that just came in there. It's not Nick Saban. It's done a different way, but I think the production is going to be pretty much the same. So I got Bama at number three, and just for the sole purpose of they went to the playoffs last year, and it's not that much different of the defense that's coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I like the leadership from some of those guys, Deontay Lawson, Malachi Moore in particular. I think him being back in that secondary is going to help a lot. Getting some of these newer guys, even the guys that have played a lot, but just getting these guys acclimated, I think will be really big. I thought that huge for the secondary, him coming back, and he's played a ton of football. So yeah, so I got Bama at four, Ole Miss at three. Um, at number two, I got those Texas Longhorns, man. They're returning uh they're returning eight starters defensively. The number one rushing defense, or would have been the number one rushing defense in the SEC last year by a pretty substantial margin, too. They only gave up 82 yards a game on the ground. Sweat, Murphy, I mean, two studs up front. Um, Obviously, probably it's tall task to replace those guys. They're probably not going to do that this year, but um, I feel like some guys are right there ready to step up. Like I said, and a lot of the other positions in the back half, linebacking core, the secondary, like I said, return a lot of guys. I mean, eight starters projected. So off of defense, that's really solid. I mean, the secondary was their weaker point. Obviously, they gave up, I think, around 254 yards a game through the air. So that was obviously the way they were getting attacked. But I do believe they'll improve that. Got a great staff there. So yeah, I got them pretty solidly as my number two defense right now. And that's crazy. I mean, it's a little bit crazy to think too. Like a Steve Sarkisian led team, you wouldn't think about them being, great defensively. Some of these offensive coaches, you wouldn't think that, but I mean, Texas 18.9 points per game last year. I mean, they were really, really solid across the board. Teams weren't running on them at all. They were controlling the line of scrimmage. Um, and yeah, I have them solidly as my number two defense at the moment.
I got them at number 2 as well for a lot of the same reasons. I mean, this team went to the playoffs last year, pretty much returning the whole defense. Not much has changed coaching wise, so I just lock and load. Let's do it again. Reload it. It's pretty much like we were used to Bama doing all those times when Nick Saban was there. That's what this Texas defense feels like. I mean, they're plugging 3 holes essentially on the defensive side of the ball and saying go play. So I don't think it's going to be much different. Like Cam said, under 100 yards rushing per game last year. That's going to be a little more inflated this year, just with the nature of the beast and joining the conference. But I don't see them getting just absolutely drugged by anybody joining this SEC conference on the defensive side of the ball. I don't see anybody that's going to go looking at their rosters and just going to go, yeah, they're going to give Texas a hard time defensively. They're going to give Texas a hard time. It's going to be harder than the Big 12 was, but I don't think it's going to just be drastic where they drop to 5 or 6. I think they're still a number 2, number 1 potentially.
Yeah, I mean, they returned Anthony Hill. He's a freshman All-American last year, 5-star recruit coming out. Malik Muhammad at corner. They got Andrew Makuba, a defensive back from Clemson, who's played a lot of football. Added a big time D tackle from Arizona. Trey Moore, one of the best edge rushers in the portal. They got him from UTSA, kept him in state. So I thought it was interesting too. They only took 11 guys in the portal, which was a lot lower than most, even the most, Power Five team. Like a lot of teams in the SEC took 15 plus. Like Alabama took 15, which I know they had a lot of guys leave and stuff. But teams like some of the top portal teams, Ole Miss, Oregon, Florida State, like Texas only took 11. Like I said, that was one of the more lower numbers probably in the Power Five. So, but they were all like they were still pretty high in the transfer rankings too because they were all like high caliber guys. Like they were like plug and play type of guys. They weren't really depth pieces. So I mean, to me, that just kind of shows me like where their roster is, where they can just go like couple really good interviews with Steve Sarkisian this offseason. Like Josh Pate had one with him, a sit down interview, and he was just talking about how his first year, they didn't even have enough depth to even have a spring game. Like he's like, we only had like 7 offensive linemen that could actually go play, So he's like, now our roster's to the point where, like I said, we don't have to like fill our roster out through the portal. Like we have one of the top rosters here. We can just go cherry pick guys that can plug and play basically. And that's what they did this cycle. That's what was really impressive to me. They only brought 11 guys in, but they were all high quality guys that are going to make a big impact. A lot of them on the defensive side of the ball. So, I'm really excited to see this Texas defense and see, can they sustain that level from a year ago? And then, is their secondary, can they improve that a little bit? Because if they can, then they're definitely going to be, they're going to hold this, number 2 ranking. So
I agree. And then number 1, I think it's pretty much everybody in the world who wouldn't even the casuals. You could ask them who you think they're going to lead the SEC in defense this year, and they're probably going to tell you Georgia. That's who I got as my number 1 defensive team. They were that last year. The guys they lost, they got guys right behind them that are just as good, if not better. They're going to plug and play. They're not going to skip a beat. They know that defense like the back of their hand. Those guys close their eyes. That's all they're hearing. That's all they're dreaming. That's all they're thinking. These guys know it. There's no mishaps in this defense. They also got the best players. They get the pick of the litter, kind of like you were just talking about Texas. So as long as Kirby Smart's there, Georgia's defense is always going to be a top 3 defense in the SEC. There's not really,
Yeah,
there's not much explaining to this pick. This is pretty much just, yeah, that's about right.
yeah. I mean, what more can you say? Got Georgia #1 as well. I mean, they've got uh, outstanding staff. Led by Kirby Smart. He butters his bread on that side of football. Obviously, um, they got they got the best players in the country. Um, I think that, in the defensive line, they're bringing back Nazir Stackhouse, Michael Williams, um, Warren Brinson. I mean, some really good players, not really to the level of what we saw in 21, in 22, but I mean, still, elite players up
Yeah.
front. Yeah, they're #1 defense for a reason. They're going to
And
be.
they got the number one, arguably the number one, number 2, if not #1 quarterback in the SEC. And from the SEC last year, a top 5 running back in their backfield with ATN joining them. So I cannot think of the other guy's name. I'm drawing a blank. That's going to split the backfield with him. So not to mention on that side of the football, you got all that. So it's like the defense is going out there just laughing because they know if we make one mistake, we're only going to make one mistake. If we do make any, they're going to bail us out. I mean, we got one of the best offenses in the league. So it's honestly, it's comedy watching this team play anybody out there because it's both sides of the ball damn near better than 99.9% of the teams.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this season. I mean, definitely the hardest schedule Georgia's had in a long time. I mean, they got a tough draw. I mean, you go to Tuscaloosa, you go to Austin, you go to Oxford. Like, I mean, that's that's the other 3 projected top teams in the SEC. You got to go on the road and face them. So, I mean, that's going to make it extremely entertaining. So I can't wait for that. But yeah, as of now and until further notice, the Dogs are the top defense in the SEC. Like
As they say, dogs on top.
Dogs on top. Defensively, especially, dogs on top. So that's how we're ending our defensive rankings. I do have to. I want to pose a question to you. If you had to say right now, June 18th, how many SEC teams do you think are going to make the playoffs? Like, if you had to say right now.
If I had to say right now, off rip, I think 4.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
I think that there are 6 that can, but I think that for sure, without a doubt, if I'm putting everything I got in my name on it, I'm picking 4, and I'm comfortable with it. I'm not sweating that bet.
Yeah, I've heard 4 a lot, heard 5 a good bit. I'm like you. I really feel 4, honestly. I feel like it's kind of the sweet spot, I guess.
Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. Those 4, if they don't get in, it's a failure of a season for those 4 teams. Any of those 4 I just named, if they don't get in, it's a failure. I just don't think that those teams are not going to get in. I think all 4 of those teams are in it. Now, where they're ranked, I have no idea. One of those teams may be ranked 12, 11, 9. You never know. But I think that those 4 teams are 100% in the playoffs. No question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for those, it's 100% playoff or bust. I mean, and we kind of talked about that over the last, month or two. Yeah, I like 4. I think when you get into 5, I definitely think it's possible. And I honestly, if we're being real, there's likely going to be 5 or 6 that probably should be in the 12. But I just think there's going to be them beating up on each other too much to get, especially 6. Now, 5 is possible. I just think even with that, I just think there's going to be a little bias there, probably not to put so many SEC teams in. I think 5 may be a little rich, even though I really feel like sitting here tonight, there's going to be 5 or 6 SEC teams that are that are top 12 teams. I just don't know if all of them get in. But yeah,
SEC
4 to
team.
me feels like a solid number in my opinion. I think if you're 10-2 in the SEC, I think even then you still got a real good shot to get in.
I think we're guaranteed, barring injury, I think we're guaranteed 3 schools. I think Georgia, Texas, and Alabama are for sure getting in. And if it's not Alabama, Ole Miss in that spot. But Georgia and Texas, there's no way they miss it, barring injury. And then I think Alabama's the same way. They're really not losing much, and they got just as good a coach. And really, okay, let's rein it in, Carden. Not just as good a coach. They got a really, really, really good coach in there as well. So I think those 3 are pretty much a lock. If I was to go pick a parlay of these 3 teams, and I picked it tonight, these 3 teams are going to make the playoffs, and I picked Texas, Georgia, and Bama, that payout would probably be like minus 8,000. Like, no duh, this pretty much is a lock. So those 3 for sure. You can guarantee 3 are going to be there, but 4 I'm very confident in.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I just want to pose that question, seeing that going around about, what do people think kind of the sweet spot is, or what that number could be. I mean, obviously these teams have to all play each other and they all can't win. They all can't go 10-2. So yeah, I mean, I think it's real possible the top 6 to maybe even 7 are in the top 12. I mean, I honestly, when you look at Georgia, Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, I mean, I think Tennessee, Missouri, with their schedule is going to be right there. I think they're fighting for 10-2 probably. Um, yeah, I think there's a good 6 or 7, honestly, that's going to be right there in the conversation, barring a game or two. So yeah, but yeah, I think 4 is probably the sweet spot, because I do think honestly they're not going to want more than a third of it to be SEC teams. I mean, everybody kind of knows that. So, but yeah, I can't wait to see how it pans out. So I had to run that by you. I do have to ask you, recruiting wise, a lot of noise right now. Oh well, a lot of noise around the SEC period, but a lot of noise around Auburn, Alabama right now, and because there's a certain frizzy-haired gentleman, I might say, that by the name of Julian Lewis, that could be Hugh Freeze's next quarterback, and I just want to get your thoughts on Mister Juju.
I think that obviously he's everybody's guy. He's the number 1 quarterback in the class. The number 1 quarterback's everybody's guy. But I think that Hugh Freeze really, really, really wants him, because this is a guy you can, number 1, not only can you build a program around, this is a guy you can recruit around. You get a guy like this to come to your program and commit to your program, you are going to watch the floodgates open of other skill players, other receivers wanting to come in there and play with him, defensive players wanting to come and be a part of that program that he's about to be a part of. I'm telling you, there's been rumors, according to 3-Man Front and Josh Pate, there has been rumors around recruiting circles that if Juju Lewis does go to Auburn, that they're saying that recruits are reaching out to him saying, I would like to come join you there. So there are talks about that. So this is a guy that can not only make a splash in the program product-wise when you're talking about how he plays and his performance, but also recruiting-wise for the next 2-3 years to come. So that would be absolutely amazing. He's seeing the investment that they've made in recruiting and obviously in the facilities. The Auburn's got one of the nicest facilities in the country. Arguably the top facility in the SEC. There's arguments certain places, but it is top of the line, upper echelon. There's not many that are better as a whole facility. And then he has a chance to come in and compete right away. I know Walker White, former 4-star recruit, is expected to, be the quarterback of the future as of right now. And Juju Lewis has a chance to come in and compete with him right away. I think that's very enticing. Obviously playing in the SEC is very enticing as well. But seeing the investment that the coach is making around him at the parts around him that the guys are his age are going to be there with him. He's not just going to have 1 year with them and things like that. They're clearly building a program and they have a vision there. But also, Juju Lewis, if you ever do happen to come across this video before you do sign that dotted line to wherever you do go, I want you to ask yourself this. And we're going to get into what we were talking about in the preview. Lincoln Riley tried to get out of the LSU game this coming season, and he was getting Fox, or Fox was trying to find LSU someone else to play. LSU nips that in the bud and says, no, we're playing this game, so he's got to go play him. Well, it comes out today, news breaks, that USC and Ole Miss for the 2025-2026 season, they had a scheduled home and home. Well, today news breaks that home and home series has been canceled. It is no longer happening. He's a sis. He's running from the SEC. Now, is it his fault? Maybe not. But he left Oklahoma when he found out they were going to the SEC. There was heavy rumors that he was coming to LSU. If he would have said, yeah, I want to come to LSU, for damn sure he would have been hired the very next second. But instead, he goes all the way across country. Now he's trying to dip and dodge all these SEC teams he's got to play. But now, so we've built the narrative. Clearly, I'm not making this up. This is all facts I'm saying. We've built the narrative that Lincoln Riley is a major sis who runs from competition. Okay, Juju, you got that? Sick. Now, how many Heisman Trophy winners has Lincoln Riley had? That will be 3. Am I correct? Let's name them. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. Okay. The last 2 years he's played with Caleb Williams at USC, where you are committed to right now. And he lost half the amount of games he won. He won 18 and lost 9. I believe that is the correct record. I could be off a game or two, but he didn't do nothing. All right. When he was at Oklahoma, better program in my opinion. He had 2 Heisman Trophy winners. And how many playoff games has this man won? You tell me you have 3 generational quarterbacks, 3 generational, and you can't win 1 playoff game? Juju. He can't even get there now. What is he building around? You got guys, their top talents are dipping out, going to other places. Look around, look at the roster, and just have a little 3-year plan out in front of you and see, where am I going to be more successful to have a chance to potentially hoist that ugly-ass gold trophy? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Auburn's going to do it, but if you want to do it, you have a higher chance in the next 3 to 4 years doing it at Auburn than you do at USC, and I will die on that hill. Whether I'm talking to Juju Lewis or I'm talking to some walk-on who has no chance of ever seeing playing time. That's an honest take right there. That's a factual take. Take it like you want it. That's my pitch to you, Juju. But that's my thoughts. But while we're staying on that, while we're on the recruiting thing, we can come back to Juju in just a second. I got to praise Hugh Freeze, because my God, has it been so long since Auburn has attacked in-state talent. 4, as of right now, where it sits, 4 of the top 10 Alabama recruits are committed to Auburn. 4 of the top 10. I don't know in the last 7 to 8 years if Auburn's had 1 of the top in-state talent recruits commit to them, but they have 4 committed right now. So clearly Hugh Freeze is doing something right. It's finally nice to see a coach with a vision and attacking the recruiting, which is where you win championships. And so I'm over the moon about this. Leading the way is Eric Winters, a safety out of Enterprise. Big time commit by 3 or 4 days ago. So Hugh Freeze he's hitting the trail hard. Obviously the coaching staff is as well. Got to give Crime Dog a lot of the credit. Derek Nix is doing a great job as well. But I'm over the moon about how just how he's attacking the recruiting process. I know that Auburn's not going to get every guy they go after. They're not going to get every top prospect. Hell, they might not even get Juju Lewis. But the fact that there is real talk and real interest that he could flip or that he potentially may come to Auburn, that is only great news moving forward to the future, because where there's smoke, there's fire, and eventually stuff like this is going to keep kicking up. And it's no longer going to be, man, am I potentially going to flip to Auburn? It's going to be, I'm committing hard out of high school to Auburn, and I'm going, my recruitment's closed. And that's what this is building to. And I could not be happier where Auburn's building a program right now.
I will say this. they're gonna have 5 in the top 10 because Anquan Fagans is an Auburn Tiger. Go ahead and lock it in. He's not.
Think so?
He's committing July 29th. Sign the papers. He's an Auburn Tiger. Just go ahead and throw that out there. So
Okay.
you're
Well,
getting
I knew he
Anquan.
was
You're getting
heavy on it. I
Anquan
didn't know that he
Fagans.
committed yet. Yeah,
You're getting Anquan Fagans. I do want to say with Julian Lewis, like you said, he just had an official visit this past weekend. So a lot of, the smoke is just churning. I can see the smoke coming out of Auburn, Alabama from here.
absolutely.
The smoke is just blowing everywhere. He's at Julian Lewis. They're at the Elite 11 camp today. Elite 11 is going on. He says, I'm not really buying him, but he's saying that he's still locked in with USC. They chose Coach Riley, the success he's had with quarterbacks and guys winning Heisman trophies. So that is what he said earlier today. But obviously he's committed right now, but he's clearly still eyeing what's on the market. Certainly. So yeah, I would not be surprised. If he ended up down there, I think a lot of momentum is with Auburn right now. In his recruitment and just in general. Like you said, tremendous job that him and that staff have done. Up to I believe number 6 right now in 247. So highest they've been in a long time. Like you said, attacking in-state talent. Just attacking anybody that's good at the game of football hasn't really happened there. So to the level that Auburn should be. And
it's a long start down there in Lee County.
He is doing that now. I said a couple years ago on this podcast that Hugh Freeze should be the next Auburn coach, and I have to say I was right, and I think that's paying dividends now. We know we can recruit. I still think they're probably a class away or so from really getting to where they want to be and where
100%.
they need to be. But they're on their way. They're definitely heading in the right direction. It's the first time you can really say that in quite some time. I feel like
I got a question. So I was listening to Three Man Front this week, and I cannot remember the guy they had on the show. It wasn't a caller. It was a guy, another sports media personality, and I cannot remember his name. But he said that Hugh Freeze has got one of the hottest seats in the SEC this year. Obviously, I think that is completely bogus because Lord have mercy, look what he's doing to build you got to give him – he's got the recruits in, but the recruits aren't going to come in and just dominate day one. Lord have mercy. So I think it's a little bit of a stretch. For Christ's sake, it's his second year, and he took over a program that was in the gutter. What are your thoughts on that? I'll go back and I'll find his name, but I cannot think of the guy's name. But he said that Hugh Freeze has one of the hottest seats in the SEC this year.
Well, yeah, first of all, I think that's crazy. And to be quite honest with you, the only person there's really 2, I guess.
Yeah, 2.
And 3, I guess, if you want to throw in Carl Lee, but I don't know if I really count that. But really, to me, there's only 2 people on the hot seat in the SEC, and that's Sam Pittman and Billy Napier. That's the only 2 that are even near
close. Now, Billy Napier's seat is on fire, and Pittman's seat is scorching hot too. But other than that, there's no even warm seat.
No one else is even close to a hot seat.
No.
Go down the list. Kirby, of course not. Sark, of course not. Kalen DeBoer has been there 5 minutes, of course not. Josh Heupel, of course not. Nowhere even close. Drinkwitz, they love Drink. He's the king of Missouri right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mike Elko, been there 5 minutes. Lane, nowhere.
Not going nowhere.
Could be the GOAT of Ole Miss.
The only way he leaves is on his own volition.
Okay, yeah. Hugh, Mark Stoops, obviously not. Nowhere close to a hot seat there in Kentucky.
2 years ago.
I guess you would say Shane Beamer, he would probably have the fourth
That would
hottest.
be the closest. That would be the next closest, but he's not going anywhere.
No,
Because
he's not. He's
what are
not
you going
really
to
close
get at
either.
South Carolina that's better than him? Nothing. But like he's not, and that's what I don't get when all the coaches or when all the conversations come up about who's on the hot seat, who when you're going to fire him. Who are you going to get? All these people just want to quit to fire somebody. Who are you going to go to that's any better than him? But yeah, I was making sure I wasn't just seeing through orange and blue goggles there and wasn't a little deterred because I'm an Auburn fan, but I was like, that's a leap right there. I mean, that's a reach. Saying he's on the hot seat, one of the hottest in the SEC.
No, yeah. I guess if you wanted to look at it like that, I mean, sure, he would have a higher chance of getting fired more than the top 6 or 7 or 8 I mentioned, but that doesn't mean he's on. I guess if you had to rank 1 through 16, who had the highest odds of getting fired, I guess he would be like number 5 or 6, maybe, just because the other ones either just got there or are Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, or somebody like that. But yeah, that's ludicrous. We don't have time to.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I got another question for you. You brought it up to me earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm going to let you take this because I didn't know that this guy played running back in high school. I assume that he could because he's a fantastic athlete, and a lot of guys play both ways in high school when they're that good. But Caleb Downs, it's been reported that he has been attending running back meetings at Ohio State. The best safety, and he was a freshman last year, the best safety, freshman All-American safety who left Alabama, started every game at Alabama as a true freshman. Went there obviously
as soon as he stepped on campus.
I mean, 100% like All-American, best, in my opinion, best safety in college football, and he was 18 years old. Went to Ohio State, and now he's potentially going to be playing both ways. We got a little Travis Hunter situation going on here. I think it's a bit crazy just because of the position he plays and on the defensive side of the ball is insane high contact, along with the highest contact position on the offensive side of the ball and running back. I think that's a bit dangerous. DBs, in the sense of cornerbacks, they're not as high contact as much, but playing safety, that man runs downhill. I mean, he's a coverage guy, but he runs downhill. He ain't scared to hit.
Yeah. I'm curious to know like how serious it is. I mean, from reading the reports too, like I know he has basically said like he wants to like have the ball in his hands some. Like they put him on punt return late in the year last year at Alabama, or he ran one back against Chattanooga, so he had his opportunities there. He played a bunch of. He played obviously defensive back in high school, played quarterback some, played receiver, I think, running back. When you're that good at that level, you're gonna, they're gonna get the ball in your hands as much as possible.
But they got Quinshawn and Travion Henderson, two of the top running backs in college football, in the same backfield. I just feel like it's a bit of a waste, and I feel like Caleb Downs will be like, "Look, I appreciate it, but brother, I'm going to the NFL after next season. I got 2 more seasons. Let me just focus on this because this is what I'm playing at the next level." Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong, and it doesn't hurt play other positions. It helps athletically, helps twitch and all that, and you being able to perform certain moves and all that stuff. But I just feel like at this point in his career, he'd be like, I think that's a bit of a stretch. If they were thin, if they were razor thin at the running back position, I get it. But they got the 2 of the top running backs in college football in the same backfield.
Yeah. It definitely didn't. It doesn't make a ton of sense. Like I said, so it's like basically Ryan Day was saying like he was sitting in on meetings, like they want to build some more like depth at that position. But I'm like, to be honest, unless it's garbage time, like there's not going to be many carries for anybody other than Quinshawn and Travion. And honestly, you're probably going to have a hard time keeping those 2 happy. Those are 2 dogs. Those are 2 dudes at running back. Like those guys could be starting pretty much anywhere.
This is like Ronnie Brown Cadillac type backfield. Like they're both that good.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm curious to know like how legit is it? Like, is it just like he's just sitting in meetings, or is it like something that they're like, oh yeah, we're really serious about getting him? Like, it's got it's a June article. I don't know how like serious they are about it. That's what I'm curious to find that out. Later on, if that's something that's actually like legit is gonna happen or could happen, or is it just like something they're just like playing around with, basically. So I don't know. I'm curious to find that out. But I mean, obviously, great athlete. I mean, he's very good with the ball in his hands, whether that's punt return, interception, in his hands. So yeah, I mean, obviously he's a great athlete, and I would understand why he would want the ball in his hands. You don't get the ball in your hands much as a safety. So
Yeah.
um,
I just
you
don't
know,
think it's necessary.
no, I don't either. I mean, two-way players, man, they're the trend right now. Shohei
Guys,
Ohtani, Jack Caglione, freaking Travis Hunter. I mean, they're the wave right now. So I get
yeah.
maybe he's trying to get that. Maybe he's trying to win the Heisman. I don't know. Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, two-way players right now. It's kind of the new trend. Or I mean, obviously there's been two-way players before, but hasn't really been many like well known. I feel like
At the highest level, no.
at the highest level. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you don't see it much now, but seeing a few more of them, maybe he wants to be that too. I guess.
Yeah.
So we'll see how serious it is. But yeah, that was definitely caught my eye earlier today.
Yeah, as soon as you sent it to me, I was like, "What in the world?" I thought it was like a Onion article, whatever that satire website is. Like, there's no way this is real.
Yeah, but no, it's gonna be interesting to see. Did want to say though, kind of before we wrap up, we're starting our 2024 SEC preview series next week. That'll run us pretty much through mid-August or so. So right up, close to the season, we should finish it up before week 0 kicks off, and then that'll lead us right into the game preview. So really excited about that. That's one of my favorite things I think that we do. I think it helps us a lot too, and hopefully helps those that are listening. Just giving a more in depth knowledge. And sometimes it's easy to miss things when you're covering 14 or 16 things at a time, teams or stuff like that at a time. But when you can really you know, lock in on one or two at a time and really dive into that, kind of to the bones of it, I guess you could say. I just feel like it just helps a lot, and I think it helps a lot once the season kicks off too, previewing games and stuff when you've had a chance to deep dive into some of these to all these teams. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. We'll kick it off, and we'll kind of leave a little suspense of who's going to be leading it off. We don't even know yet either, so we're going to figure that out. But yeah, we're excited to kick that off next week. Thank everybody for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Saturdays_SEC. Like I said, leave comments on our YouTube videos. We want to hear from y'all. What y'all's thoughts? Give us your defensive rankings. Give us your thoughts on our preview series coming up. We'd love to hear from you. And hope you guys have a good one, and we'll catch y'all back next week.
Thank you, guys.